Okay, everybody ready? Go ahead and call the meeting to order. With all due wish, I take the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No, Superintendent, Chair proposed agenda adjustments. Any other requests for agenda adjustments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes. I would make a motion to approve the minutes from January 23rd as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, or comments? We'll go ahead and vote. Since I'm back, we can do this by hand. All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Next up are the warrants. I would make a motion to approve payroll warrant 16, main purse warrant January 24th, regular warrant 16, and capital improvement warrant 5. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Next up, the floor is open for public comment. Anybody like to comment? Not seeing any public comments. We'll move on to acknowledgements. Jake.
Thank you.
I don't think I have any either.
Yeah, I'd like to briefly acknowledge the high school girls varsity basketball team. They've been getting pretty involved with the Orono Rec, second, third grade, fourth, fifth grade girls teams. They had a clinic last Sunday for them. They've been inviting them to games. They've been, really getting involved, and that sort of engagement and mentoring is really admirable. So it's been heartwarming to see and indicates that kind of, across school sort of community that happens here. So just a shout out to them.
Great. Noah? Mark?
I actually do have one tonight. This was a little bit overdue, but I would like to acknowledge the town council for completely ignoring what the school board wanted to do in terms of the election date and going ahead and making the motion to have it in November anyway. So thank you to them for ignoring what we wanted to do. Much appreciated.
Students?
Brief acknowledgement for the boys and girls basketball teams as the girls played their last game before playoffs last night, and the boys played theirs tonight at the pit. So there's nothing to do after this. This will be a great game. The UMaine, the track field house, they call it the pit. It's the scariest place to play, and when you're not the home team, it sounds like. Apparently.
You've never been in that gym?
I mean, I've been there to vote.
Or in the actual gym, but not the field?
Oh, maybe I haven't.
Connected, I think, right?
It is. It's like super old and cool.
Oh.
Like rickety.
I heard the other day that, back in like the, I don't know, 60s or whatever, Time Magazine or Sports Illustrated had it as like one of the 10 most intimidating gyms to play college basketball in.
They don't make gyms like that anymore. Like you're right on top of the court and it's like super steep and
Right.
you should go check it out.
Oh, I'll go wonder.
Next time you're in the building.
Thanks.
It's a great New Deal construction.
Oh, is it really?
I believe it's that era.
History.
Great. Meredith, any acknowledgements?
Yeah, I would just like to add, and sorry if I'm stealing some of Sam's thunder, it's probably in their report. The OHS cheer team had regionals last weekend and came away with a great score. They're actually classified in the South division, which, makes me scratch my head. It came in runner-up in South. Their points total was higher than anyone in the North division, so if they would have been in North, they would be champions. But it also qualified them for states this weekend, so best of luck to the cheer team.
Next up, we have reports. Speaking of basketball games, Sam, I think you wanted to go first.
Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me. It's kind of loud over here. But yes, the pit is very interesting. The kids are really excited, and I appreciate you guys allowing me to come in this way so that I can be there with the students and our community as we cheer our kids on. I actually appreciate you saying that, Meredith, because that hadn't made it into our report since it happened pre or post when we submitted it. So thank you. And along those same lines of athletic acknowledgements, just want to make another shout out to Ruth Wright. She won her 3rd consecutive Gatorade Cross Country Award, which has never been done. And so that's pretty amazing. And congratulations to her. Otherwise, in my area, I'm going to report out for both Meredith and I. So in my areas, what I wanted to highlight on was Step Up Day. Step Up Day is coming up next Tuesday, with a snow date of next Thursday. Once again, I've had a small but very dedicated, committee working with me to help put on a fantastic day for our incoming ninth graders. This year, we also had, some students from our ambassador program joining us, which really was, for me, was very helpful because it really gave more perspective of the student than we've been able to have in the past. And they offered ideas like, with the tours, for example, instead of walking through and peeking in classrooms, we've worked out a schedule where they're going to visit with certain content teachers for 2 to 3 minutes to hear more about the content and really get a better perspective of not all of them, obviously, but a few of the contents, as well as walking through the school and seeing our space. And they also, instead of having a panel where everyone agreed it was awkward, to be staring at each other and nobody asking questions, the ambassadors and other OHS students involved are going to tell their story. So they're going to share their story of their experience at OHS and what makes that special, unique, and why they chose OHS if they're in that situation or not. So the kids are really excited for being a part of it. I very much appreciate those on the committee that have helped. And I'm really hoping it's an exciting day. Our co-curricular fair is going to continue, as well as lunch in the cafeteria, which is cheese breadsticks, which is apparently a phenom of excitement. And so anyway, so it's looking like a good day. But I just wanted to make sure if you guys didn't have any questions for that. Also, that evening of Thursday, so the 15th, we're gonna have our family night, which we're really excited about having it back in person. We haven't done that since COVID. We're gonna start it in the OPAC, offer families of incoming ninth graders to join us and see the school and ask questions and meet some of our staff and some of our ambassadors. So that's exciting stuff. Also in my side of the report, I've just had the privilege of starting the process of the Say Something training with our students, and that's been really nice. A lot of great questions, a lot of good involvement. A lot of them have said, this is just another way that you can help us, right? And I said, yeah, it's just another way we're here to help you. So that's been really nice. I have 3 more days. No, I lied to you. I have 2 more days of that, but 3 more sessions of it. So I'm really excited to be a part of that and appreciate the support the board and Meredith and others have given for that program. For Meredith Diamond's Lane, she wanted me to highlight that in mid-January, the English department faculty members convened to review the portfolios by the ninth graders and want to be considered for acceleration past the second semester of English 9. And through this process, 7 students entered or earned exemption from the second semester of English 9 and moved directly into either an elective or XPOS writing. Sorry, there's basketball boys, my sorries. And then she also wanted me to highlight that at the end of January, hold on, I'm watching. At the end of January, the OPAC hosted the second Orono High School Why Should I Care forum. For our second forum, it was Maureen Tyne that synthesized her learning through the course of an independent study of the evolution of the environmentalism in the United States. The forum was held during Win-Win and approximately 50 students attended. And I heard it was actually Scout, who's our OPAC manager, said it was like a professional TikTok. She was pretty impressed. So anyway, so that's what we have to highlight. If you guys have any questions for me, and again, I appreciate you letting me attend the game.
Great, thank you. Any questions? All right, thanks, Sam. Go or no? Carrie, you want to go next?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I have to say it's nice to see all of you on the screen. I know the month of January didn't allow me to join you, so I'm happy to be joining you this evening. And I sound a little bit off. I'm battling a little touch of either a cold or a sinus infection, but making it through, even though I sound kind of yucky. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of 3 quick things for you tonight from my report. The first one that I'd like to mention is that the PTO is planning a family dance at ASA for the beginning of March. They'll have information coming home about that very soon, but it will be an opportunity for families to get together. They have a DJ, an MC. They have someone that will be there taking photos for the families to have family photos and refreshments. And it seems like this is an event that they're really excited to plan and put together for people to network and spend time together. So I'll be excited to be part of that. along those lines of inviting families into our building, the literacy team has been working really hard this year, and they've started planning a curriculum night for the end of March. And they're going to be having a cultural feast kind of theme around the book called Our Table. And we're very excited for this night to invite families in, have some snacks, see some different projects that are going on around the building. So it seems as though the month of March is going to have a strong community theme, which we're very happy about. And then the last item that I just wanted to mention and to all of you is that Susan Smith has been working with the literacy team to apply for a grant through the Department of Education that has the potential of bringing $23,000 to our literacy work this spring and summer. And some of this money will go towards professional development and helping teachers learn more about implementing the science of reading components into their classrooms. So we're very excited about that opportunity, and that grant application will be going out very soon. So we're very excited about that. And that's all I have for you.
Great, thank you. Any questions? All right, Richard.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to be here tonight. And I want to highlight in my report, although we have lots going on the academic front, I listed a few things in my report. I really wanted to highlight where it's February now, some of our co-curricular and extracurricular goings on at the middle school as we're right into, end of season tournaments and championships and all of that going on this time of year. So, but I want to start with recognizing the folks at Dental Works Prevention. They were in recently, February 2nd, last week, to run their dental clinic, and that's a great opportunity for students to get a hygiene exam and general teeth cleaning. And that collaboration has proved very beneficial for a lot of students. And so I want to thank them for coming in again this year and working with our students and staff. So that was great. But on to our co-curricular, we have our OMS Spelling Bee, and hats off to the following students for earning the honor as our school champions to represent OMS at the Penobscot Valley Middle League B in Glenburn, the annual PVMLB on February 27th. And they would be Edmund Dixon, Connor Fay, Kate Jernigan, and Hazel Yezkovich. Those students will be representing OMS on February 27th. And last Saturday, we had our B basketball tournament and our PVML chess tournament. And Orono has a strong reputation in previous years, for many, many years, as being a strong chess school. And I'm glad to say that we're back on top, and we captured the PVML championship on Saturday. And so Coach Tripp is off to states. They're coming right up, the states championship. So we'll follow that. We're continuing this week, our second week of collaboration with UMaine Football. And they're coming in and meeting with some of our students, mainly our football players. And so that collaboration continues on this week. And as I noted earlier, we have the A basketball tournament at Hanbin Academy on Saturday. The cheering competition, end of season, that's at Bangor Christian on February 15th. And of course, our spelling bee. And then three other things I want to highlight quickly is we have our Q2 celebration coming up on Friday morning. We're going to follow the traditional video format. We have the outing club met today, and I think I counted 29 students, and I think there was a couple that couldn't make it today. So we're into the 30s that will be planning to go to the ski trip with Mr. Kirkpatrick in Greenville. And so that's coming up, and we're doing planning for that today. And as Sam mentioned, Say Something, we had our student training last week, and we're up and running here at the middle school. We received our first 2 tips that were kind of school level things that we dealt with, and that's a great resource. I see lots of potential there, and so but good. I'm happy to announce that we got that up and running, and that's what I have tonight.
Great, thank you. Any questions? No? Go ahead and move on to the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. I have just a few things to report on outside of some things on the agenda. First of all, the central office project is in most ways is moving along really well. We did learn of kind of a snag today. They discovered what we thought this morning was suspected asbestos. By afternoon, it was confirmed asbestos in an area that had been previously tested, but clearly not tested like at the depth that the work ended up needing to go to. It was something that was a change order actually in the floor of one area. They were going to just put tile over existing flooring, but the flooring was coming up and not level. So they said, well, we need to take off tile and grind it down to have a smooth surface. So it was when they did that they found the mastic that we have found in so many places around the school and had to remediate. So they are now, working on giving us options, developing a plan for that area. We've done a lot of remediation. We did remediation leading into this project and thought we had it all. But this is an area that I think it was because of the change that was required due to conditions that probably it wasn't tested in the way that it ended up needing to be exposed. So we'll find out more in the coming days about what that means for delay. One of the things I just want to give you a heads up on is I learned this week more about a change that's coming to Spruce and Prep. Those are two regional collaboratives that we've been a part of for a long time. Spruce is a collaborative that mainly provides collaboration around special programming and services. For a number of years, it was mainly around regional special education services, but it became the mechanism for our region to also have what was called an educational service center that allowed us to collaborate and get state funds because we were showing how we were collaborating to, find cost savings through regional collaboratives like regional food purchasing and regional paper purchasing and things such as that. And so that's Spruce, and I think Jake serves on the Spruce board. And then there's Prep, and Prep has long been really a professional development collaborative around, and it's been around for years as well. And we pay dues to Prep, we opt into Spruce where it makes sense for us, and we pay on, based on services we utilize. I will say one other element of Prep that's not really professional development is there is a regional contract with a psychologist that we buy into a certain number of hours to have more psychology services, school psychology services for our district. So these two groups have a lot of the same members, and we are moving toward really a merging of these organizations into one educational service center. And really it doesn't mean any services are going to remain the same, maybe expand some. It allows us to have one regional director who will help serve both programs and help be funded by the state model of educational service centers. And basically what it means for us is we have to approve a new interlocal agreement this spring. It doesn't have to be voted on by voters. It's something that boards can just vote and affirm commitment to. And a couple in our group have been working with Drummond and Woodsum to get this interlocal agreement ready. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background, especially if you're on like the Spruce board, you might hear something about that there. We anticipate that it will remain the same, that Bangor will continue to basically run the regional programs and provide all the services for that. And the approving of their budget would run through this, I think, new Penobscot River Educational Service Center. So I'm going to ask you sometime this spring to vote on that interlocal agreement. It has 2 years at the initial start, and then I think after that, it kind of rolls either annually. And so it doesn't require, like, it doesn't sunset, for example, in 10 years or anything. And there's a way that you can exit if you want to by giving notice that's outlined in the agreement. So that's coming. Another thing I wanted to mention is a couple of you are on the well-being work group. That group's work is coming to a conclusion later this week. The timeline for that work was designed to wrap up in February to have some recommendations to provide back to the myself and you all as a board, so that we could consider those for any funding needs. And so when we have our meeting this week, we're going to develop kind of the priorities. And I think what's going to happen probably is that group is going to need to merge into a longer term work group, because I don't think it's just going to be, okay, we've given you these recommendations and this is going to fix everything, right? And but I will be bringing you those recommendations probably the end of February. It might be the 1st of March from that work group. And I think it's been a valuable use of our time, and we've really explored a lot of ideas and had great conversations around it. And I think it coincides nicely with our work in strategic planning, but that's really emerged as one of the top kind of concerns that comes out from every angle when we survey for feedback. So I think it's going to be something that we continue to work on into the future. A group of us attended the wellness conference Department of Education sponsored, and we picked up some good ideas there that I think also informs our well-being work. So more to come on that. Any questions?
Okay, now we start budget season.
Yes, it is upon us. Lynn is also joining us from the pit. And this is really just a high level beginning to prepare folks for details that you'll get at the end of February. And so I don't have anything prepared to give you in writing, kind of on purpose. We never do at this point. This is just to give you some context. So 8279s came out, and I think I reported to you maybe last meeting that we had an increase of state subsidy of 326,000, which, that's good news to be getting more money. We had the local required went down by just over 1,000. And in addition to that, I asked Lynn just to do some preliminary look, take a preliminary look at tuition, because that's our other big revenue source. And what she sees is what she has seen emerge over the course of this school year, which is a drop in tuition student numbers. And so she said, for example, from May to August, I think last year, we saw a change of 10 students who were tuition students here who left us. And those kinds of changes make big impacts in our overall number. And as we look into next year, judging by what she sees now, doing some forecasting, she sees a similar picture of less tuition revenue than we built into this budget year. So the offset of that is not quite what we projected right now, not quite what we got extra in subsidy from the state, but almost. It's looks like about a $270,000 drop in tuition student projections. So when you put that with the 326 extra, it's a net of about 56,000 additional. There are a lot of other little pieces to the revenue that we'll see next time. And of course, a big consideration point that we'll make is how much are we going to put in our revenue from our unassigned fund balance? Are we gonna do some one-time purchases of anything from unassigned? Those are some decisions that we'll have to make. On the revenue side of things, there are some really big drivers that you'll see in the numbers I'm gonna give you. The biggest one is salary and benefits. Right now, we are projecting to have about $1 million increase in salary benefits next year. You know, some of that is a new contract we settled last year. Some of that is, you know, projections on the contract we're working on right now to be settled and implemented next year. A portion of that is 8% we've built in for our anthem increase. We'll see what it ends up being. And a final piece of that is a new state program that requires us to have payroll contribution to family medical leave that's above and beyond what we offer as a district. That you have to have a payroll contribution for 1% of your payroll. That starts in January, so that's $50,000 for us next year for half a year. That hits our budget for the first time, that we have to provide payroll contribution for this new program. So all of those factors get us to $1 million. And that's, you know, those are things we don't really have much choice in how that hits our budget. And so when, you know, Brian and I first talked about the 8279 and the 326,000, you know, his comment was, that doesn't even come close to touching inflationary costs we're seeing. And, you know, when you look at just the salary impact alone, you can see you know, how those two numbers really are misaligned. So, there are some other drivers on the, expenditure side, but salary is by far and away the biggest, about $1 million increase. Right now, the budget looks like it's about $1.3 million increase, but it's not quite finished. But if you look at that and know $1 million of it is salaries, there's not much else in there. 100,000, and I think it's 104,000 of our increase is because when we went out for our bullet bond, we replaced the bond anticipation note, you know, it's that rolled around creative financing we did on the bond. When we went out for that second note, interest rates were a lot higher than they have been, right? So we're having to pay more interest than was anticipated and that what we've had to previously. So that's $104,000 increase. So, you know, those two are the two biggest things that we identified in the budget as big increases causing where we are. We'll talk about, you know, some other things next time. But, you know, I guess I wish I had better news to kind of seed your thinking about what I'm going to be bringing you. But I just, you know, it is what it is, and we're gonna have to figure out how to respond to that. Do you have anything to add, Lynn or Brian?
Anything to add, Lynn?
I would think, I just wanted to say that in that number that Meredith's giving you, that's not adding any new staff. That's with our current staff. So we took, you know, there's nothing new in that number. That's just rolling the staff we currently have over to the next year.
You mean the $1 million increase is what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, I've been doing kind of a deep dive into 8279s. And, you know, the current kind of administration, the governor and the legislature been really bragging about we're hitting 53% as the first time ever. What you have to know is that's 53% of the cost formula. And the cost formula has not been keeping up with inflation. So I just looking from 2018 to 2025, so that's a 7-year window. The EPS formula has gone up about 15%. There's been some incremental increases in salaries. There's been incremental increases in operations and maintenance and transportation, all those other line items that we have and that go into the ED 279. But that 15% increase over 7 years has to be weighed against inflation, which is 30% in those 7 years, and wage increases have been 35% in those 7 years. So you flip that around, and we've actually seen in real dollar terms a decline of 10 to 15% in state funding from the last 7 years. So, and that message is just not out there. I think they're kind of winning the day with, we're funding 53%. We like education. But the truth is, they're underfunding teacher salaries, they're underfunding, fuel costs and building costs and transportation costs. And they've actually had a double-digit decline in education funding in the last 10 years in inflation-adjusted dollars. So I think it's really important that we start to get that message out. I've been trying to set up meetings with our state reps. But I think just, all of us need to help get that message out. The other thing, I won't do the division because I don't want to put numbers out in the air yet, but if you take that 1.3 million, you divide 588,000 is how much the mill is. So if you take 1.3 million divided by 588,000, that's how many mill increase we're talking about, which would be the highest mill we've done since any of us have been on the school board. It's higher than the year the bond kicked in. So this is a real number. Like Meredith hinted, I think some of the salary increases are front loaded to this year. And not that they're small, but they're smaller the next 2 years. So it might make sense to take some money out of our capital reserves have been growing. This is a conversation for a couple of months from now, but it might make sense to take some money out of that to just smooth the transition. But that's going to be a smooth, we're going to pay that money eventually. But it just might spread a tax increase across a couple of years. But that's additional thoughts I have. I mean, in particular on the legislature, they're still meeting, they're flush with money, they have more money than they know what to do with, and they're fighting over where to spend it. So I really think some advocacy and trying to make sure that they hear from us that they're not funding education, they're actually cutting education, because I don't think the current legislature would really like to be painted as cutting education. So I think there's a chance to push that and maybe change the story, but that's going to have to happen pretty quickly. These things often start to lock in by March or April. So you have any thoughts on the political situation, Mark?
No, I mean, the governor did come out in her, her state of the state with a small increase for K-12 education. It wasn't really as big as I thought it was going to be. But the coffers in the state of Maine right now are more flush than they've ever been since I've been here now for 20 years. So there's money out there to be spent. You're reaching limits on where you can stick that in terms of rainy day funds. And so I think your point about advocacy is a good one, right? Especially if you can get the narrative out there that really you've been cutting education funding in relation to inflation. It's an election year. Those kind of things matter in election years. So
yeah,
it would probably be a good idea for people to start contacting Senator Tipping and Representative Osher and beyond.
Yeah, I've done that, but I'd obviously encourage all of you to do that too. And those of you who are listening, you live in Orono too.
Can you remind me, you said, what happened the last year you started writing a letter to the op-ed?
Oh, that was a year ago.
I know, but sort of vaguely around similar issues.
Yeah,
But I don't think we ever sent that, right?
we didn't send it. In the end, they did put an increase, right? The same kind of time frame that we're talking about. They did put an increase in, so I decided to let it go last year, but yes, an op-ed to the paper would be another. I've also contacted MSMA. What's that?
I mean, if you want to do this, now is the time for it, as you said. I mean, this, whatever the funding is going to be for education will be settled in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Speaking a little bit more to the tuition end of it, sounds like we're declining in that. Is it an issue of these kids are going elsewhere, or just the populations are declining, so there's not as many kids to be had? You know what I mean? Like they're still obtaining the same percentages, but it doesn't work out to the same amount of bodies.
Well, if we lost 10 that we had, then that means we're losing,
Right.
we're
Yeah.
actually losing. And I think I was gonna be my comment too, is I think it's worth a serious look at
Yeah.
why that's happening.
And where they go.
Yeah.
I've got some guesses, but I would like, I'd like some group at the high school to take a serious look at that. That's not good.
Sometimes I think Lynn said 4 became residents. So, I mean, you pick up increased subsidy the next year. But you lose it, you know, if you count on them for, tuition, it, you know, makes you short there. But I think it is worth looking deeper into. I can tell you that the 9th grade, this year's 9th grade, we, pushed the limit probably of like predicting where it should be. And Lynn, didn't you say they came up short in 9th grade?
Yep, 9th grade, we came a little short of what we had budgeted. We were a little less conservative this year, or I guess last year in budgeting, and we came up just a few short there. But the other big problem this year is the number of 8th graders out there is a lot smaller as well. So we have a combination of losing some that are here and not enough out there to replace the ones that we'll be losing because it's a big senior class. So we're losing a big senior class with not many 8th graders to replace from sending communities.
But I can ask the high school if they have if they can provide any insight on the tuition student transfer out. If they see any trends or.
I will say it definitely isn't all going to other schools. There's some of that, but we've seen quite a few actually out of state. So it's been a little bit of, it's just been a kind of a perfect storm of all different things happening. So.
Any other thoughts or questions on budget?
Yeah, I mean, just following up on the op-ed thing, it sounds like you don't wanna try that again.
I'd consider an op-ed. I'm trying a more direct targeted personal lobbying effort, but we could try an op-ed too.
No, I mean, I think, yeah.
I mean, in particular, this year we have representatives and senators who have been in the session for a few years and have some ability to move the discussion. So I do think directly contacting our local people is worth doing, but I'm not opposed. I could take a quick think about op-ed too.
Or maybe bouncing it off of them. If they find that helpful.
Yeah, I don't know if they would find it helpful or not, but we might want to do it anyway. Yeah, I'll think about doing that too.
I mean, it sounds like this was a simpler story to tell than last year.
Yeah, last time it
year
was more
felt like it got
complicated.
Big and complicated and hard. Like,
Yeah,
it sounds like we could make a very simple story that's clear to understand and short.
yeah.
So the other piece of information I plan to bring you next meeting is just an enrollment update, because I think that just helps you see, you know, where are we now? What are the numbers coming up? So that'll be another piece that you'll see next meeting.
Okay, ready to move to the board survey?
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
Excellent. Rachel, could you make me a co-host so I could share screen? Yeah, you're the host, Meredith, so I guess you have to do it.
Oh. You there?
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on
I moved where I was supposed to be.
So every year we send out a board survey. February is typically when we do that. And by policy, the board has to agree on the questions before they go out. We've kind of settled into a place, I think, we used to do ISLIC standards and stuff, but I think we settled into a place we like, but there's some choices at the end. So we asked basic demographics, which category are you in? We asked the 3 values. This is probably going to change once we have our strategic plan, but I think until that's in place, we go with these 3 values one more time. What we're doing on meeting each individual at their level and moving them forward. We value the whole student and we foster a growth mindset. It's interesting to see that, these themes certainly carry through into the reports. So I think there's some pretty consistent values in this district, but it'll be nice to have the update. Open-ended comments. And then we have the ongoing board responsibilities, which you'll see on the left, actually all these things you'll see on the left side of the agenda page. So we have fiscal responsibility, open-ended comment, buildings and facilities, open-ended comment, continuing to hire excellent staff, open-ended comment, building cross-stakeholder teamwork and collaboration, open-ended comment, transparent district-wide curriculum process, open-ended comment, update district policies through a consultative and transparent process, open-ended comment, general feedback on the board. And then this is the part where we probably have some changes. We have goals. If you look in the top left corner of our agenda, we have 4 goals this year. This was based off of last year's goals. So for example, I'm going to guess we don't want a survey about COVID this year, but we did last year. We also surveyed about maintenance. I think we kind of made that commitment and talked about 400,000 a year, maybe working up to 500,000 a year on maintenance. So that question may be done as well. We asked a question about implementing the DEI plan, which matches on annual goal number 1. We asked a question about stretching all students, which matches annual goal number 2. We did not ask, right? So 2 of these overlap last year and this year. We could carry them forward if we so chose. The other 2 goals we asked are about developing a strategic plan. I kind of think maybe we're too midstream. I don't think the community is going to know what's happening with the strategic plan, so it's probably a year early. And in fact, a survey on the strategic plan is going to go out to the community in about a month. So I would recommend not doing that one. And a focus on mental health and emotional well-being for all members of the school community. Again, I'm not sure what to ask there. There's been a well-being committee, but that hasn't rolled out, but it feels like a topic. So anyway, I would recommend we drop the COVID question. I would recommend we drop the maintenance question. I would recommend we keep the DEI question, because that's to the point where there has been 2 or 3 years of implementation. I would recommend we keep the challenge and stretch all students. And then there's room to add 1 or 2 more questions if we want. We could add something about well-being, although I'm not sure how to phrase that. We could obviously ask anything else too. So I guess first question, is the board happy with keeping the first 3 sections the same?
Yes.
Okay, so matching the bottom 2 sections on the left-hand side. So the 4th section is what we're talking about. Everybody want to keep the DEI question?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody want to keep the challenge and stretching all students? Okay. Anything people want to add? Anybody have a question around well-being or anything else?
I mean, I can imagine asking something to the effect of, because the other one is, other questions from previous surveys are sort of like, how well are we doing this? So how well as a board are we supporting either schools or administrator? I don't, I'm spitballing. How well are we supporting, or, I don't know, words in there about, addressing issues with the well-being or mental health of members of the school community, or almost as a way to sort of give people a chance to write something. It may be a little off, they may redirect, maybe less about us and more about other things, but it would get people thinking about it. We've seen that sort of thing before in the superintendent survey or whatever, where it just becomes a place for people to dump some ideas.
Yeah.
But it is something that comes up in our meetings a lot in terms of the people we've hired to work with mental health, who are full in terms of the number of 504 accommodation or 504, get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, accommodations, so it does seem relevant and I'd be curious.
I mean, I can imagine three flavors. We could ask, how well is the board doing? Or how well is the district doing? We could ask, how important is it that the board invest resources in this, kind of paralleling the question we asked around maintenance last time? Or we could ask just an open-ended question, what do you think the board should be doing about mental health and well-being? Right, or we could do the second and the third. I'd be open to any of those flavors. I kind of think the second and third might get more constructive feedback, but I don't want to talk from asking about how the board's doing either.
I mean, the second's nice in that if we get a strong response, it could be a mandate. If they're saying, no, you should be putting resources here, we're glad to see, was it? My brain is cheese tonight. Is it Bo or who's the person we have full-time now?
EJ.
EJ, not Bo. But you know, if folks are enthusiastically supportive of the idea of resources being invested in this, and it lets us know, especially as we're, heading into these dire budget years, if we have to decide where we're putting our pennies and dollars, I think it's helpful to know what other folks think.
Any other thoughts?
I think that's, sounds like a good idea.
So ask how important and what should we do? Open-ended question. Yep, okay.
You're gonna draft some,
I could draft some language. I'll send out an email. You can reply to me individually if you don't like my language, which is fine, but we can't edit as a group.
right.
And, Doris and Marissa, if there's something you think we should be asking, open to hearing that too.
I encourage the mental health question to go in there, but I don't think, that there's anything we feel strongly about being in.
I mean, I will say, getting students to respond to this particular questionnaire, we've never had much success. I get it that students don't necessarily have a deep connection with the school board. They tend to respond more to questions about principals, for example, but,
It's also a lot of open questions, which I respect a lot for an adult to sit and think thoughtfully about it. I've watched some of our freshmen try to answer even just multiple choice ones where it becomes why is it 15 questions?
Right.
And then beyond that, to have to explain why it's important and difficult. I feel like the concept of a student oriented, like short and concise one would be an interesting concept.
yeah, I mean, you're right, Marissa. I have noticed that, way more students feel overwhelmed by the open-ended questions than it's an opportunity to expand their thoughts. I mean, sometimes they even type, why are there so many questions when they feel overwhelmed? It's really quite striking, whereas I will say, as somebody who's read a lot of these surveys from the adults, that's actually, to me, that's way more useful than the numbers. Okay, we got a 5.3, what, kind of doing okay, we could do better, but the feedback is actually much more helpful, but I suppose we could put a version of the survey together that doesn't have the open-ended and send that to students.
Working collaboratively on that. Yeah, like.
I'm sorry, what?
Put one together, yeah. Or at least working together to try to cater to like what
Mhm.
students actually would.
Yeah,
respond to.
yeah, we could share a version of the survey and then three of us could work together.
And then we would get you feedback that's just as useful,
Yeah.
without it being overwhelming for individuals.
So just having them there even as optional things, depends. Doing the surveys,
If a student. The best way I can describe this is if you get to the top of the survey, the first thing that every student I've ever met does is scroll all the way to the bottom. And if it takes you more than 2 scrolls on your trackpad to get to the bottom, you've already decided you're not gonna put your all into it.
To be fair, that's what I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sense from reading them though is yes, it does prevent students from responding.
Yeah, and especially if it's, I know we have a couple teachers that love to do the 2-page ones, where the first one, kids will scroll down, oh, I can do this. And then there's a hidden second page where we have to provide feedback. And that has gotten worse. Every single band kid has been tricked by that.
but having with one or so open-ended questions.
We can do one at the very end is typically what happens, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, do you have anything else you want to talk to us? And sometimes students will respond very generously to that, and they'll be like, yes, I have so much I need to discuss. And sometimes it'll be like, no, thanks. I've gotten a lot of surveys back that just some people go, I don't know why this is here.
Yeah,
Is there any value in taking the same approach to everybody or?
I think the adults, I can engage with the survey at the length that it is and give us pretty good open-ended feedback, so.
Can't just cater to the Kevins.
You can have the high school.
I'll get the student version. Maybe for the surveys for my class, similar, I will have like a multiple choice and then anything else.
Like, I guess I wonder, in some of them, I feel like I've seen the open-ended question where it's over and over, that people will like have the same answer, like, would there be an efficiency to just having one open-ended?
I really don't share that perception. I share getting quite a bit of feedback, and the open-ended answers. And I think the cases that you're talking about are ones where there's a lot of students. We've done some surveys recently, like the well-being survey, where class time was given to have the students respond, and that's I think where you get the same answers over and over. Adults either skip it or they tell us something, so. Does the board like that idea that I'd like to send it out in February so we don't start to overlap with other surveys, so it would not come back to the board? Is everybody comfortable with my and maybe Meredith working with the students to put out a shortened customized version for students?
I'm fine with all that. I would just say whatever we do to modify the student version, just make sure that it's still allows a reasonable comparison, that we don't end up with something that's so different that we really can't get much of it.
Right, maybe keeping a subset of the questions the same.
Gotta be comparable. I understand yeah, I certainly understand survey fatigue and open-ended questions. It's not just kids from doing polling for years. I would always limit the open-ended stuff as much as I could, but that's generally where you get the most valuable information. The open-ended stuff. In an ideal world, we could focus, right? Now, really get both. That's probably not efficient.
Any other things we're missing? So we'll do the mental health well-being, but anything else? This is our chance to survey district-wide questions, right? The principal survey, the superintendent survey, the strategic plan survey. All will go out later. But anything else we want to know?
Is there something, I mean, I forget what it's on, but like just about knowing about the board or connections to the board, like I mean, part of like strategic plan thing is connecting school and community. Is there anything just like?
Next question, do you know who's
I don't
on
know,
the
maybe,
school?
do you even know about this? Like,
How often do you go watch
something
board
getting at
meetings?
that, like, are you, yeah. That would be one question. If you can think of a way to get at that connection.
I mean, we definitely have the open-ended feedback. We'll say, I have no idea what the board does with policy. That's a pretty typical response, actually. We could do an open-ended about how would you like to hear more about what the board is doing?
Yeah, I like that.
Board Instagram page, sorry.
What's that?
I said the board needs an Instagram page.
I was gonna say, in the past, we have gotten that feedback and we've tried a newsletter and nobody reads the newsletter.
I wouldn't read a newsletter.
Right, principal newsletters come first, superintendent newsletter comes second, and
I
the board
agree.
newsletter is way down the list. So, students might look at an Instagram page, maybe some adults would too, but I'm not volunteering to do that, so.
Okay. We got it in the bag.
I think these things are continually posting.
Yeah.
Currently updating, hashtag Tuesday
Live
night.
feedback.
Live every time.
I like it.
I mean, I go to conferences and people live tweet the talks. Somebody could be live, I don't, tweets, not Twitter is not a thing these days, but.
Live Xing.
All right, so, drop the COVID, drop the maintenance, add the two well-being questions and an open-ended question about the board. That sounds to me like probably enough. Everybody happy with that? I will email out the language later this week, just so you can, tell me if you see something terrible, but otherwise we'll try and send it out. I'll coordinate the exact schedule with you, but oftentimes we have the answers due back at the end of spring break, the Monday or Tuesday after spring break, and then we can look at the board meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I don't want an in-stream. Zero.
Well, we have one as a district that could be
That's fine.
utilized.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I was told FY she has to watch all the board meetings and, do social media on board meetings. I'm joking, in case she's listening. Okay. Staff nominations, co-curricular nominations. I would make a motion to approve the slate as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Just for the record, it's very short. Assistant varsity indoor track, Noah Parker. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Next up is the GAI. So you all got a copy of, Meredith and I worked on this and then I went through the policy committee. So obviously there was a lot of feedback. Trying to bring up a copy here. So you guys got a marked up version. You should be able to tell reasonably easily what changed, but let me just highlight that for you.
There's also a printed copy in your folders.
Right, okay. So nothing substantive under section 7 allowed GAI technologies, but just making it clearer that it kind of emerged pretty late in the game before I went to the board that we're not restricting what teachers can use, we're just restricting what students use. And then also updating this in 2 ways. One is ChatGPT shut themselves down to 13 to 18-year-olds without parental permission. So we're recognizing that parental permission would be needed for ChatGPT. The other, and this is just already happening more and more, is existing software packages are putting AI inside of the software package. So one package that's already been used in art classes, Canva, an art drawing program, already has AI in it. Students are already using. So case in point of, right, things are here. My understanding is students are already using it, not necessarily in a formal class exercise, but students are using it. And that's just going to continue. I downloaded a PDF reader program, editing program that I like, and it has AI in it. I click a button and I get a summary of the PDF that I just opened. So it's so anyway, so we found we had to deal with these embedded things. We basically said that software that has already been approved by the tech committee, like Canva, would continue to be approved if GAI is added. One thing we did add, this is thanks to some feedback from Kevin, is something about deep fakes. We felt like that was already kind of covered in policies, right? You know, you already can't make up something about a student and circulate a story just to harass them, but since this document sort of has an educational role, we thought we should add a paragraph about deep fakes, which you can read. And still not going to make everybody happy, but tweaking the student feedback. We made it more clear that if so, section 11B, Roman numeral 3, Arabic numerals 2 and 3, which is teachers using it to give feedback on student assignments. It's now making it clear that the teacher has to review that feedback before passing it to students. And based on some good feedback from Marissa, we've added an opt-out clause so that either on a per assignment or a per semester class basis, a student can tell the teacher they don't want the work submitted to GAI and that there would be no penalty to the student for doing that. So there's an opt-out clause. The teacher can still come up with a worksheet using GAI and then hand that via paper to students. But students cannot be required to either have the teachers submit their work to GAI or be required by the teacher to submit their work to GAI. So there's an opt-out clause. So those are the adaptations we've done based on feedback. Again, this is fast moving. 2 months from now, I'm sure we'll have other things we think should have been blindingly obvious to include that we haven't. But on the other hand, the cat's already out of the bag. This is happening all kinds of places already, including in the schools. Not so much with the students, although there are cases with the students, but with the teachers for sure. So I guess I'm of the position it's time to put it out there, recognizing it's imperfect and gonna change a lot. And it's a compromise document, and it's a weird status. It's not really a policy. It has a substantial educational role. But so we recognized first, even though it's not a policy, we chose to have 2 reads come before the board. So I'm gonna make a motion to adopt the guidelines after having a first read of guidelines on generative AI. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, open for discussion. Thoughts? Do you have thoughts on what's missing or, agree that it's time to go ahead, or what are people thinking? Marissa?
Is there any other comparative policy for us to look at right now? I know
No.
it was last time.
Yeah, I did some searching again. You can find like the state departments of education. Virginia has one, North Carolina has one, the US Department of Education. The World Health no, it's not World Health, it's UNICEF, United Nations. They all have these guideline documents, but they're like 50 pages and they say, these are the things you should think about. But I have yet to find somebody who actually, kind of analogous to a board policy that says, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. 2 to 3 pages, staff and students can read it and understand. So Deb White says she thinks a lot of districts are working on something like this, but I don't know. She pointed us to the North Carolina policy, which is more of an educational, it's purely educational, and it's 40 pages long. It's not gonna get read, except by people who have to. So as far as I know, this is still unique. So, yeah, we don't have anything to point to. It's a good question.
I have a procedural question about these sorts of things. So how do we revisit this? Suppose there's some revelation we have about AI or some development, as a board, how do we bring this back up?
Or just needs to ask to bring it back up and we can put it on an agenda, or if it's complicated, we might refer it to the policy committee first.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had that happen, but the board has a right to ask us to consider any policy at any time. Might get voted against depending on, but I feel very strongly any board member should be able to get a policy back under consideration.
I just asked ChatGPT what policies we should have around using AI. And one thing it came up with. So you have student opting out, and I guess one question is, what is the parental, and level of involvement or awareness? And consent?
Well, I guess that's a good question. For high school students, I think it would be reasonable and traditional to leave that opt-out at the student choice. So I guess the one place where this could impact it is like a 5th grader or a 7th grader. If they are not allowed to run the software in the schools, but if the teacher is running the software to give them, the teacher says, instead of having pure reading of your writing, why don't we do a ChatGPT reading of your writing and the teacher runs it? That would not have, I would have a student at the moment that has a student opt out, but not a parent opt out.
And this is a K through 12 policy proposal?
This is K-12.
Yeah, I guess I could see ways in which, I don't know, but like if parents, if the kid's writing something that goes into ChatGPT or goes into the internet in some broad way, and it's something about the family, the privacy issue, and the parent feels like they don't want that out there, but the kid doesn't have the capacity to make that decision.
I mean, the privacy issue is at least partly to swallow through FERPA, right? And teacher is not supposed to submit anything that has identifying information. I'm not opposed to the notion of a parent opt out for K through 8. I'd kind of still like to pass the policy and then come back to fix it. But, the cat's just getting out of the bag more and more, so I'd be open to considering that as we have done that, adopted policies and then changed it the next board meeting or two later, but be open to considering that, but, what are other people thinking?
If you were gonna do something like that, you'd also need to work it in some way, shape, or form into the disclosure statement, because right now, I don't think that disclosure would be necessarily forthcoming. For the example you just gave of an elementary school teacher running a student sample through ChatGPT. So,
Right, it would be closed to the student, disclosed to the student, but not the parent.
right, so you have to tweak the disclosure statement to in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
teacher was gonna do that, that disclosure would have to go to parents, I guess, you know. Either an email or some way that the teacher communicates.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if it'd be the disclosure statement or the permission. Yeah, but somewhere we'd have to, the teacher would have to give advance notice before using it with K-8 students.
Yep.
Yep, which further makes me think I want to take a chance to go ahead and pass this and work on that language later, because it's not trivial, but,
Would there be an addition to the student handbook in reference to this policy?
we haven't discussed that. Short term, I think it lives here, but I think over time, it probably, some of these parts probably start to roll into the student handbook.
There would have to be some mechanism for making students aware, high school students, that they can in fact opt out, right?
Yeah.
That has to be somewhere.
Yep.
It could be in a course, syllabus, could be the appropriate location, but it could be multiple locations, right? I mean, the handbook's one, my guess is the vast majority of students will be in the handbook, but that would probably be a good spot.
You will read aloud every year, by the way.
But the syllabi will probably be the best place for it, right?
Syllabi, and, but I also think this next year's issue of the student
No,
handbook
sure.
should have a paragraph on GAI as well.
The more we can make sure the students know that.
Yeah,
It'd be nice, and I'm not gonna command anything, but it'd be nice if this was part of a conversation in most classes. Because often I find students are well aware of the technologies available, so it's not like we're telling them something they don't know. So they know, and we know, if we're not talking about it, then we're missing an opportunity to talk about legitimate uses, or what constitutes plagiarism, or when is it a tool, or. I mean, those are important conversations, especially in preparing for college, where this is also an issue. So, and in those conversations would be an opportunity to say, hey, I would like to use this for feedback. However, you do have the right to opt out, it could be part of that intentional conversation and not just left to, they should be in the syllabus, but students don't always read syllabi either, so.
I would certainly agree that's best practice in teaching. And I,
Thanks, that generic endorsement.
What's that?
It was a nice generic endorsement.
yeah, I'm just trying to think through if there's something we need to write as a policy, or, just expect the teachers as good teachers.
Yeah, that's true.
There is no such thing as mandatory syllabus language in RSU 26, but.
I mean, how many at the high school, how many classes actually do you get a syllabus?
Every honors class does. Every AP class does, but other than that, it's not required, so. Most people do like an introductory lecture, but still alive, there's. It depends.
Okay. I mean, I'm knowing what Mark's getting at the university level, that's how a lot of policy is driven, is you have to have a syllabus that's handed out to students, and then the university can require to have little snippets of language in there.
Then you can also get the link, right? You can get the link to all the policies. So these ways in which you can have them, but not address them at all in any sort of meaningful way. So it becomes very performative.
I'm guessing that a lot of information is shared through Google Classroom,
Yeah.
policies, procedures, like the info page. Guessing.
Yeah.
Not like that, there's a syllabus, but other ways, so.
Certain teachers set it up in things and they'll start with the first day with it and then say, you're never gonna see this again. Because it's the truth. Personally, I'm a very big fan of syllabi. I was just putting it in the calendar.
You're a non-random sample of the student population.
You are or are not?
I am,
Oh, you are.
very big fan.
So wait, the disclosure stage, so I understand, this is, you disclosed that GII was used, do we have something saying that it will be, used? That's what we're talking about, or?
Well, that's what Mark was saying for parents of younger kids,
Or
we
even
have
at the
to
high school.
pre-disclose.
Even at the high school, is there, like, disclosure that I'm going to use this?
Well, there's different scenarios, right? So if a teacher is going to use it to evaluate, read the student's paper and give feedback, they would have to pre-disclose, so there is an option to opt out. On the other hand, if a teacher is gonna just use it to make a rubric or to make a worksheet, or if somebody was gonna use it to make a position description, right, those kinds of scenarios, you wouldn't have to pre-disclose, you would just have to disclose with the material.
So I guess I'm just, where does it say you have to pre-disclose if you're gonna have the students over?
Last page.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, it doesn't say it in so many words, but it's implicit in the notion that the student has the right to opt out.
Well. But that requires them taking action and asking. Yeah. Whether it will be having.
Yep, we could work on that language too. Maybe there's a whole pre-disclosure section for teacher use.
And has there been teacher interest in using AI within a classroom setting?
Yes. I mean, it's all over the map. Some teachers are never gonna touch this and other teachers are like, this could be the next great tool, so. But yes, it exists. And as you might guess, broadly stereotypically, maybe science teachers and tech teachers are more interested in this than English teachers and. There's variation, but I think I've heard some of the English teachers. It's, when you get right down to it, this is a writing tool, and I think our relationship to writing 10 or 15 years from now is gonna be completely different. So I think forward teaching, writing teachers are gonna have, I don't know what the answer is gonna be, but they're gonna have to start coping and thinking about this, so. Professionally, people are already using this to write. My sister is a PR person, does press releases all the time, and she uses ChatGPT to write first drafts of every press release. So. Anything else? Are we ready to vote? All right, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of adopting the guidelines? Opposed? And you want to just state for the record what your opposition is?
I mean, I think this is definitely much improved, from previous versions we've seen. I especially like Marissa's contribution to the opt-out, and I like the tweaks that have been done to, whatever number this is now, I guess it's 11 at this point. But my reasons for voting no, specifically lie in 11, B, I, Arabic numbers 2 and 3. I don't think that it's fair to students, if you're going to use generative AI to give feedback, at any stage of a writing assignment, but then grade them, on feedback that wasn't given by the teacher, right? Ultimately, the feedback they're gonna react to feedback that doesn't come from the teacher, and then the teacher is gonna give the final grade on the assignment. So, in some ways, if we're gonna do that, just go all in, right? And just give GAI do the whole grade. I might be more willing to do that, as much as it makes me want to vomit.
But the GIA gets to do all the grade. I would vote for the students being used GIA due to the assignment.
Sure. I think ultimately Brian's right. I think our relationship to writing is gonna fundamentally change, but unfortunately, I think it means that writing for the vast majority of us will be dead, within the next 30 to 50 years.
I mean, I think the analogy is calculators, right? Students today don't learn how to do, beyond the times tables of 1 digit by 1 digit, they don't learn how to do calculations in their head nearly as much anymore, and quite frankly, nobody's missing it, right? Well, I pull out a calculator too these days, so.
I think I agree with you. I just, if we don't have a policy at all, then that's happening.
That is true.
So that's why I voted for it.
Yeah.
Some parts of the policy that I think are moving in our direction.
Definitely nothing's perfect at the moment, and we already have changes planned, so, but it passes 4-1, so that's adopted for the district at this point. Subcommittee reports, policy subcommittee, we moved past PAI and started working on water field trips, which is surprisingly technical and complicated as well, in various opinions, but we haven't finished that, so that'll probably come forward sometime in March. I think hopefully we'll finish it at the March policy meeting. UTC.
Yeah, we, brief update, we heard from an architect, because we're looking to expand facilities, and so they had done an assessment of the current facilities and proposed various ways to add on and gave a price tag. I forgot what it was millions and millions of dollars. And then I know the superintendent's group had met earlier that day about the various stuff around expanding, and I don't know if you want to talk about that. There was a superintendent there that night that was like summarizing, but you would do a better job than I would.
Yeah, I think, there are just, questions about enrollment projections, questions about, are we considering all options in terms of, are there spaces in our region that have capacity to take on some of these programs that we're expanding into? Just, general concern about the amount of that kind of bond and what it would take. And also looking at, the superintendent's group is really interested in looking at models and making sure that the model that we're, if we upgrade UTC, to the tune of either, I think the numbers were something like 25 million or 80 million.
That's
for
what
like
it is. It's
the two
25
different
to 40
options.
or something, yeah.
This is a model that we're saying, we're gonna use for the next 20 to 30 years. So there are a lot of different models in CTE to consider, and is this what we're ready to commit to as a region? So felt like there were maybe some other core questions that needed to be answered before moving into a project like that.
Does Orno have any concern? I know one of the things that was brought up was, if you expand a facility like this, so they can essentially nearly double their student population, and that draws significant students away from a school, it could reduce needs for teachers or things that could it could benefit a district if they're short on funds, but it could also, could lead to layoffs potentially if you don't have full classrooms anymore. Is that anything that we're worried about, or?
I mean, potentially. I think one of my questions is, what's the unmet demand we're trying to fill? And what are the enrollment projections in the region show for the next, foreseeable future? And for us, I don't think there is a huge unmet demand. I think in other districts, there maybe are more students who don't get in to what they're looking for. And so what we talked about as a group is the importance of maybe doing a regional enrollment study. So we see enrollment trends and can do some better projections that way, because for UTC to double, I mean, they started out the year with not enough space, but now they're down like 80 students because students dropped out and people aren't filling those seats. So it's a little bit of a risk to say we could fill twice as many seats when, there's this issue of if the seats aren't there at the beginning of the year, kids don't typically want to transfer in after a month if the seat opens up. And then you typically have this, this isn't what I thought it was, I'm going back to my home school phenomenon, sometimes some years more than others, and this year it seems pretty impactful. So some really complicated things to consider, I think. And I don't know what the pulse of the board at the UTC level is, but I know the superintendent, there was a lot of Almost feeling like, this is good information, but wanting to make sure the train isn't rolling down the tracks because there are too many concerns and questions that need to be answered.
I can't believe they're considering this without doing an enrollment study.
But I don't know that they're not. I mean, we're quite a ways away from shovels. So I do think that the intention of talking to the superintendents is but we do have a number of enthusiastic board members, who are enthusiastic about CTE. Although a couple did raise the question of also projections within industry and make sure that, industry doesn't become saturated. And then we have all this, space and this debt, and, there's no longer the same demand that we currently have for folks in trade. So I think there's enthusiasm, but also some caution. I was just kind of curious what your take was from our school system.
I mean, I think my big question goes back to what you were saying about models, right? The current model is you have to do transportation, which means you have to commit half a day. And, at the same time that there's this thing where they're starting to open up little branches in the schools so that kids don't have to commit a whole day, they can get a flavor of chef class or film class or whatever it is back at their own high school. And it just seems to me like that model is gonna have a lot more potential than the centralized model, in which case, why is the centralized building, right? Even if you were gonna spend 25 million and there was an enrollment demand, that enrollment demand is almost more likely to exist in the individual high schools than this big centralized, everybody has to ship in for half a day kind of model.
Well, and the other big model the state is doing is an integrated high school CTE center where, students can more fluidly move between academics and programming. But it is, a centralized model. And that's probably considered to be the best model for CTE students because, it's limiting to have to fit all of your academic courses into one half of, the way it's done in our region, half of your day. And so we're also talking about schedule among superintendents and really pushing for there to be a thorough consideration of switching to full day programming every other day as opposed to half day programming every day. So a lot of pieces that need further consideration, but I think our tech center does a great job with, they have, in my opinion, the most efficient model in terms of getting the most for their money and really utilizing that space, maximizing the space. They just do a great job. When you see, the level of funding that some of these other centers ask for and, their enrollment is just not nearly as efficient as ours.
Yeah, there was definitely a tension at the school board meeting, Maine School Board Association meetings where, to oversimplify, Southern Maine wanted to have this funding formula that was gonna give way more money to these mega centers down in Southern Maine. And I think a lot of people in Northern Maine are like, we're being efficient with our money. Why should we send all the money down to Southern Maine? So. Anything else on UTC? Thank you. Curriculum subcommittee in 2 days. There's course proposals and some the health curriculum and what's the other curriculum I'm missing, Susan?
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Skip spruce.
What's that?
You skip.
Oh, spruce.
Sorry, we have a meeting next week, Thursday.
Okay. Thank you. Facilities and building. I mean, you heard the update from Meredith.
The only other thing is Haley Ward is still working on their proposal for us and I think, or just reached out to me tonight to set up a meeting to discuss it further.
Anything on wellness?
Working on scheduling.
Okay, DI leadership team hasn't met since last time. Subcommittees are meeting. Strategic plan meeting next week. Meredith and I put our heads together today. It's gonna be an exciting time, so don't miss it. we're working on goals. So we put together a list of, what was it, 13, I think, goals that have emerged out of the process, and we're gonna do some voting and trying to scope those down at the meeting this next Tuesday, so. Anything else there? Any requests for other business?
I had something that I thought of that I just want to ask a question. And Rachel had the same thought within 5 minutes or another. It's time to begin thinking about student board reps, and I'm trying to remember when we talked about this in the fall. Did we land on staying March to March, changing? We didn't land anywhere. I think we talked a lot about that, but
Felt like they just joined us.
I know,
Yeah, we were about to ask you that question at the end of this meeting,
yeah.
so.
I can also put it on the next agenda if you wanna think about it. We can talk about it a little bit, but,
Well, based on Mark's acknowledgement earlier in the meeting, maybe we should go November and November.
June, is a better fit, but no one cared about.
I mean, we could still do the board reps whenever we want them. I mean, June to June is a better fit, or,
Yeah,
you know.
in a lot of ways, March is a weird time, just because that's when the new board reps are sat, but. We don't necessarily have a shared training with new board reps and student reps,
Yeah.
so I think. I agree, maybe we should put on an agenda item for next time, but I kind of think the school year. Would be a more logical time frame.
So brings up whether it's like a full renewal or it's like a staggered process. Cause many of the school boards that we engage with, the conference that I've heard of, have a staggered term, so there's always one senior and one junior.
Right,
Because to us, like, considering what we experienced with both being new school board members, it was a very difficult process to try to like start everything back up again. So, yeah, that's actually my P5 for GWD for this spring is setting up a whole handbook. And through that, one of my things is establishing how the actual term is set up. So that was actually something we were gonna ask Superintendent Higgins about at the end of this meeting, so glad this was brought up. But
so in other districts, is the junior seated for 2 years, so you have a seasoned board member who's
yeah,
helping the
so it's
new.
like there's like one, the more experienced one who can train the next one for the next year.
Yeah.
Which seems more efficient, at least in our minds, than having like a full refresh.
Yeah, I can see, I mean, it's a few less opportunities for students to participate, but I can see the logic of the continuity in the training.
It can also be more opportunities for students if we can cast our mind back to the beginning of our term. We were statues for multiple months. That is, then that's unhelpful to you guys as much as it is unhelpful to the people sitting in these chairs. And to have someone to reassure whoever is new and to possibly speed that process up of like younger siblings talk faster because you have an older sibling to talk to. Like it gives that opportunity.
All right, sounds like a good discussion topic
I'll
for
put it
next
on
time.
discussion for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Any other business or future agenda items? Open up the floor for public comment again. Seeing none, our next meeting is 3 weeks from now because of spring break, February 27th, 6 o'clock in the library or on Zoom. Any requests for information or follow-up? I would motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. We're done.
I came here ready to settle in. My wife asked me, you gonna be home tonight early? Oh, no.